let's get started. Hello, everyone. I'm Collette Spagnolo, VP of Marketing Analytics globally at DoubleVerify. I'm based in our global headquarters in New York, and if you're in New York right now, good luck with the monsoon that's happening outside. But welcome, everyone, to our 2024 Global Insights webinar for the Americas. It is great to be here today. Our mission at DV is to make digital advertising stronger, safer, and more secure. And transparency and thought leadership are both critical to this mission, which is why we are all here today. Our annual Global Insights report provides advertisers with an in-depth global analysis of the biggest trends in our industry, spanning APAC, EMEA, LATAM, North America, to help inform digital advertising strategies. We're about to launch our 8th annual Global Insights report, and we've been doing this webinar series for 4 years as well. In our webinar today, you will get a preview of the reports, looking at region-specific quality and performance trends that make North America and LATAM's digital media ecosystems unique. Today's focus is on the Americas, which covers the US and Canada, and LATAM, including Brazil, Mexico, and Colombia. I'll be taking us through the findings from the report with specific insights from the Americas, and after reviewing those findings, I'll open up the discussion with our fireside chat panelists, who will now introduce themselves. John, let's get started with you.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Gian LaVecchia. I am the Managing Director of the Americas at DoubleVerify, and very happy to be sitting on this fantastic panel with unbelievably talented individuals. So thanks so much.
Thanks, John. Rob?
Good morning. My name is Rob Auger. I oversee our media practice for the Boston region here at Digitas North America, and I also oversee our media technology practice nationally. Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for joining. Terri?
Hi, I'm Terri Schriver. I lead our brand safety practice at Bank of America, and I'm based in Charlotte, North Carolina, and the weather is beautiful here, but I'm happy to be with you all this morning.
Thanks for that. Deva?
Hello. Thanks so much for having me. Deva Bronson. I lead brand assurance and media responsibility globally for the Dentsu network. Really happy to be here.
Thank you all for joining. I'm really looking forward to our discussion in a bit. Before we do get started, a little bit of housekeeping for the audience. You guys can ask questions in the Zoom Q&A box throughout the session. Hopefully, we will have some time at the end for Q&A, in which we'll address some of those questions. But first, let's take a deeper look at what our Global Insights trends are this year. So let's ground ourselves in this. We are all living amongst 4 seismic shifts that have been reshaping the media and advertising industry in recent years and months. First, regulatory changes, privacy and transparency. In this era where data is the new currency, there is a growing emphasis on privacy and transparency in advertising. And the shift is driven by regulatory changes like GDPR with our European friends, CCPA within our own borders, but also driven by an increased consumer awareness about how their data is being used. Second, digital transformation, consumer behaviors. Not a new concept at all, but still worth noting here. As consumers continue to spend more time on digital platforms, e-commerce is now the norm for shopping. The rise of social media, streaming platforms, e-commerce, and other digital channels have expanded the avenues for advertising and for reaching consumers. But that also creates fragmentation and challenges with consistent measurement. Third, consumer expectations about sustainability and social responsibility. Today's consumers are a lot more conscious about the environment and social issues. They expect brands to not only talk about sustainability and social responsibility, but to walk the walk, incorporate those values into their business practices as well. And last, but definitely not least, new tech, AI and automation. These are revolutionizing advertising, introducing a lot of challenges, but also a lot of opportunities, which we will talk about shortly. A quick look at the current DV ecosystem, which helps everyone understand why we are well poised to analyze these industry-wide trends. So here at DV, we measured 7 trillion media transactions in 2023. That's across platforms, devices, formats, and channels. And we have an expansive global measurement footprint that helps contextualize regional insights. And very important, we are fully independent, objective, and therefore we provide unbiased measurement and analysis for our customers. So this is a transformative time for advertising. The industry is fundamentally rapidly changing, and advertisers have more information than ever before to juggle. Nothing demonstrates this more strongly than these key trends that we're going to dig into shortly. These cemented themselves in 2023. In the past year, AI became even more widespread, accelerating this transformation in media. MFA, made for advertising content, increased significantly. Attention gained much more popularity among media buyers. Retail media networks, or RMNs, have grown and proved that they have specialized inventory with a place in many advertisers' media campaigns. Strong media quality is definitely still the baseline for advertisers to be able to generate performance. And lastly, sustainability measurements show that higher quality media actually leads to lower carbon emissions. So let's dig deeper on these. Let's start with AI. AI is more than a tech trend. It is truly a revolution, reshaping the world, redefining the boundaries of what's possible for us as humans. The widespread use of AI introduces both challenges and opportunities for marketers. New concerns, from deepfakes to increasingly sophisticated fraud schemes, are another reality of this AI revolution. And as part of this year's report, we also surveyed 1,000 marketers globally about these trends. And our survey showed marketers' concerns about the negative impact on media quality. 7% of LATAM marketers and 48% of North American marketers believe that Gen AI negatively impacts media quality. And 64% of LATAM marketers and 46% of North Americans worry increasingly sophisticated fraud schemes negatively impact media quality. A concern that is actually rooted in fact. The DV Fraud Lab, hard at work, has seen fraud schemes grow in the wake of AI. In 2023, we tracked 58% more streaming fraud schemes and variants. But those fraud schemes are not just higher in number, they're also more complex, more complicated, with more than a 250% increase in the average number of variants per scheme. This means fraudsters are able to quickly and powerfully spin off more variants to try to avoid detection. And while CTV and audio streaming fraud is definitely more popular in the press these days, we're not just seeing increased fraud in these more nascent environments. We also recorded 2 times as many mobile app fraud investigations last year. But at DV, we fight fire with fire. The DV Fraud Lab uses AI to detect and protect advertisers, leading to just a 1.1% invalid traffic rate in 2023 in the Americas for our protected advertisers. On the opportunity side of AI, though, with the ability to deploy sophisticated optimization strategies at scale, tech like algorithmic bidding provides huge opportunities for advertisers to protect their media investment and, importantly, boost campaign performance. Automated optimizations can also drastically reduce hours spent on operational workflows. Our survey found that marketers spend nearly 1/4 of their time manually optimizing digital media campaigns. That is time that could be much better spent on more efficient and effective tasks. And AI-powered campaigns save both time and deliver their own return on investment. Sybid's AI delivers an average return of 400%. Of course, AI can make it easy to produce content at scale quickly. And another trend that we uncovered is that made for advertising, or MFA, content is on the rise. MFA sites exhibit high ad density. They have ads frequently refreshing. They have a heavy reliance on paid traffic sources. They duplicate content across many different sites, and they are designed to keep end users endlessly scrolling, clicking, but the ads have low viewable time. And advertisers are aware of this trend, and they expect it to negatively impact them. 58% in LATAM and 45% of North American media buyers say that an increase in low quality content and MFA sites is a disruptive threat to the digital ecosystem. We saw MFA impression volume increase 19% year over year, which makes understanding the implications of this even more important. And MFAs are built to be attractive to advertisers. They exist to generate revenue, right? Literally made for advertising. And if all you're doing as an advertiser is looking at the basic metrics of quality, you might not even realize you're running on them. MFAs actually perform on par with our authentic ad benchmarks. This is because the sites are built to maximize the bare minimum of quality. And this is very apparent once you look at them from a performance lens. Our report shows that MFA sites underperform the DV authentic attention baseline by 7% for display and 28% for video, primarily because of low exposure. That's viewable time, share of screen, intensity of the ad experience. And this is just one of several reasons why advertisers are leaning into attention measurement, which has been gaining traction for several years, but in 2023, it definitely became a key part of many more advertisers' media strategies. More than half of LATAM media buyers and 36% of North American media buyers plan to rely on attention-based metrics this year for most of their media buys. And we at DV are seeing this come to fruition, with global attention activation at DV tripling over the past year. The more that advertisers measure attention consistently across their campaigns, the better that they can understand and maximize performance. And when comparing the performance of traditional viewability optimized campaigns with attention optimized campaigns, advertisers saw an average 50% increase in upper funnel awareness metrics. And high attention ad placements drove an average of 30% higher lift in branding KPIs versus low attention placements. On the lower funnel slide, a major telco brand using our attention measurement solution found that high engagement ads, as defined by DV, drove 2.5x more qualified traffic and sales versus low engagement ads. Now, this difference between viewability and performance continues to play out when we look at retail media networks. RMNs just continue to gain popularity with their rich consumer data and the ability to reach audiences at the point of purchase, especially as we all know cookie deprecation approaches. In addition to attracting high intent audiences, though, RMNs also generate actually better brand suitability and fraud rates compared with our DV benchmark. And audience extension also boosts the overall viewability in RMNs. Now, it's important to note that many retail media networks leverage pre-bid activation on audience extension buys, which can help improve media quality performance. So while overall RMN viewability is 8% lower than benchmark, the lower performance is definitely driven by owned and operated retail inventory. But that's in line with advertiser expectations, because unlike traditional ad environments, e-commerce platforms, they're serving as digital marketplaces. Their primary focus, and actually their value even to advertisers, is on enhancing the shopping experience. And viewability optimization for the ads that show up on their sites often takes a backseat, which is what advertisers expect. And while viewability is significantly lower in O&O, it's important not to overlook the value of retailer sites and apps. Even though it has lower viewability and exposure, it effectively targets shoppers at key decision moments when they are much more likely to engage with ads. In fact, engagement is 183% higher on average across owned and operated inventory when compared with the DV attention baseline. Next, let's talk a little bit about media quality. Overall, brand safety and suitability rates have generally improved, but it is still important for advertisers to stay vigilant across campaigns, especially as we enter an election season like 2024. In fact, our survey showed 58% of North America media buyers, 66% of LATAM media buyers are at least somewhat concerned about navigating political news cycles in 2024. Not surprising, considering the number of elections happening globally and the major elections in both the US and Mexico this year. And this concern that they have is not without reason either. Already this year, high-risk hate speech and cyberbullying and inflammatory politics and news surged in the US according to our data. So it's important for brands, agencies, and ad tech companies to work together to ensure that you're protected without limiting scale during an important election cycle. And our authentic ad goes beyond measuring viewability, of course, and looks at the rate of ads that are viewable and serve in brand suitable, brand safe, fraud-free, and in geo environments. We did a comparison here between an unprotected campaign versus our DV protected advertisers. And unfortunately, unprotected advertisers inadvertently buy much more low quality media, and that generates a lot more campaign waste. DV advertisers are able to reduce that waste through pre-bid and post-bid protections. That helps increase their return on ad investment. The unprotected campaigns showed significantly lower authentic viewable rates at 59% for display and 53% for video. In other words, more than 1/3 of unprotected ads are wasted on low quality media. Lastly, let's talk about sustainability, which brings up another aspect of media waste, the hidden cost of doing nothing. Digital advertising produces a significant carbon footprint. And to understand the relationship between media quality and sustainability, DV analyzed emissions across all DV Scope 3 active customers, who produce an average of 21% lower carbon dioxide emissions per impression than the Scope 3 global average for the same period. And the average emissions for all DV advertisers, not just those actively using our Scope 3 partnership, is also still below benchmark. This shows that there are significant knock-on effects of not just protecting your media quality, to the tune of $13.2 million that DV advertisers have saved in the social cost of emissions alone, simply by running higher quality media. Okay, now that I've uncovered some of the key highlights from this year's Global Insights Trends Report, I want to open it up to our guests for a lively, hopefully, discussion about how these insights play a part in their worlds. As introduced in the beginning of the webinar, I'm delighted to welcome my colleague, Gian, along with some of our top clients, Rob Auger, Deva Bronson, and Terri Schriver. So let's jump in. For DV advertisers globally, there has been a positive shift in global trends across our three core quality indicators: brand suitability, fraud, and viewability. This improvement has been observed for several years in a row, and it reflects a strong adoption of both pre and post-bid verification mitigation strategies by advertisers. First question is really broad. Just how important is media quality to your overall strategy? Let's start with you, Terri.
Sure. Gosh, media quality. I could just say straight out of the gate, it's extremely important. I mean, when we look back over the last, for me, it's been about 8 years working through brand safety and suitability in the industry. And the tools that are available or were available to us then really focused on things like fraud and avoiding the worst of the worst content. But now that we have a suitability framework in place that is pretty much widely adopted across the industry and implemented across most channels, even socials stepping up to make sure that we can use it there. And on top of that, the changes in ad tech where we have ability to kind of evaluate for bias and misinformation and other things. I mean, that's really changed the game as far as finding quality content. And this is critical to us because we believe that where our advertising shows up is a direct reflection of our brand. So I recognize that that might not be everybody's opinion, but it is ours. And when you think about marketing and your brand being the most valuable asset that you have, it's really imperative to make sure that we engage users in those quality environments where there's a positive experience, where we know that there is protections for user privacy, where there's, it's fraud free, it's piracy free, there isn't harmful content. And so, we go to great lengths to seek out this quality content. We put in filters, we take extra steps in evaluating our partners. And of course, we use all the pre and post-bid tools that are available to us. And that really gives us the confidence that we're doing the best we can to align and find that quality content that's out there.
Right, it's an investment, right, Terri? And not just money, but also time, and
100%.
making sure it's important to your strategy. Rob, what about you and your clients in terms of how important media quality is to their overall strategies?
Yeah, I mean, nothing has really changed. Quality was and has been and will remain top of mind for us. I think as long as our industry continues to evolve, We see new platforms, we see new formats. That just signals that we cannot take our foot off the gas, so to speak, in terms of ensuring that our clients are showing up in quality environments and environments that aligned with their brand standards. So we definitely advocate for a brand suitability strategy and measurement solution like DoubleVerify. And even things like the deprecation of third-party cookies, where we're seeing more walled garden like situations arising. I think we're starting to find that we are combining those third-party controls with native in-platform controls, right? So where we're not able to apply some of the third-party controls, we combine those with some of the in-platform controls. Like, for example, in CTV, we may leverage a combination of DoubleVerify protection, but also excluding some genre or rating selections in the platform themselves. And I think what's important to note here is that brand suitability is not a one-size-fits-all solution. So it's important for the agencies to work with partners like DoubleVerify to kind of customize the suitability framework, understand the risk tolerance. Obviously, all brands are not going to have the same risk tolerance. A brand in the financial services sector like Terri is going to have a much lower risk tolerance than someone in apparel or entertainment. So what we focus on is really finding the right solution for each client.
Makes a lot of sense. You have to customize it, right? Deva, what about you in terms of media quality?
Yeah.
How important is this to your clients? What are you hearing?
Yeah, would love to double down on everything that my wonderful colleagues said to start out with. Media quality as a discipline, as a set of standards, does have the possibility of affecting every point in the ecosystem, straight from the start of the planning process all the way through to campaign performance. It's vitally important that we think of media quality not as a nice to have or as an afterthought, but that we have it top of mind from the very beginning of the process, because it goes directly to this business that we're all in, this media business that we're all in, direct effect on performance KPIs, direct effect on cost efficiency towards the end of the campaign. Like what Terri and Rob said, media responsibility and media quality factor into all of our marketplace partnerships. We're very upfront, as I think all agencies are right now on behalf of our clients, to set the standards by which we mean to transact in the marketplace, so that all of that can translate well into the protection of our brand's reputations.
John, anything to add? They covered a lot. So
We did cover a lot. I'll just reinforce a couple key points. The idea of establishing the highest caliber of a media quality baseline is foundational for the modern marketer, as you see on this call alone. I think the opportunity ahead of us is to further enhance and augment those data sets with new signals like attention, which we'll dig into in a little bit, to help provide more impact and insight into how your marketing performance how your marketing investments are actually doing in market. There's this idea that quality fuels performance. It's a concept that we've actively socialized with our customers and continue to see plan out in the open markets.
a nice way to wrap that up. Deva, in terms of emerging channels, right, especially ones gaining in popularity very quickly, like retail media networks, what do you see in terms of media quality? Is that important as a baseline for your clients?
Absolutely. So it's worth noting from the beginning of my answer that specifically retail media networks, historically we've had have offered very little visibility for advertisers through verification partners like DoubleVerify. From what we can see, the winds are starting to change a bit. So we're really happy about that. The other thing that I'll start with is traditionally, O&O, so sort of any owned and operated properties that retail media networks might be operating on. Traditionally, we know as an industry that O&O properties might have lower risk in terms of safety, suitability, and fraud violations. But one area where we all know we have to be very careful is if there's any data-driven targeting that's happening through audience extension. So anything that has anytime an ad has the ability, whether through data or through modeling or anything like that, to appear against open inventory. So once the environment is less controlled than an O&O environment within retail media, that's one area that that we as an industry need to keep applying pressure for allowing verification to be appended to campaigns to protect our clients. So specifically, those are sort of initial thoughts in retail media. Other emerging channels, obviously, we need better definitions against some of the streaming platforms like CTV, certainly streaming audio, and certainly podcast as well. Obviously, there's no desire to disrupt any of these emerging platforms and channels because every channel should have a place in our ecosystem, multiple touch points for consumers, especially at particular times of need for consumers. Everything is important. It's just a matter of getting arms around it so we can make sure that all of our clients are protected.
Timing is everything for sure. And yeah, the making sure that consistency of measurement is something that we've championed in the industry since our beginning, right? Let's dig in on brand safety and suitability specifically. We've heard from advertisers time and again, really challenging to navigate during an election season. And those violations, especially in election season, can have some serious consequences for brands. And as I noted earlier, more than half of media buyers in the Americas are at least somewhat concerned about navigating those political news cycles in 24. More than, or nearly half, actually say that elections have a significant negative impact on media quality. They actually think that that causes that. And as I noted earlier, we're also seeing spikes in things like inflammatory news and hate speech. So major elections are coming up in the US, Mexico in a short week and not even week and a half, and elsewhere globally. It's a huge election year globally. How can advertisers ensure that their ads are brand safe without limiting scale? Rob, I think you're well poised to speak to this first.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, again, I think it goes back to understanding the risk tolerance per client, right? Obviously, um, as you mentioned, election cycles can fuel a lot of heated news content. And so I think we just need to be very careful about where our brands are okay with showing up. But I think we also, have to be mindful of excessive safeguards during election cycles. So we learned this during COVID, when COVID first emerged, all advertisers just added COVID or coronavirus to their keyword block lists. And before we know it, as COVID took over, all of the news, we were not blocking news categories entirely. And, personally, I think that it was a little bit detrimental to supporting journalism, which we think is extremely important in our industry. A lot of journalism outlets are funded through advertising dollars, and so we just need to be mindful that we're not kind of over blocking and inadvertently, defunding the news platforms. And so I think today we have a better understanding of how to do this well. So, I think there's been advancements in the brand safety controls that we have in terms of, not just relying on a keyword block list. I heard recently that, nobody should be relying simply on a keyword block list. It's really all about context. And so we're dealing with, keyword strings and contextual. We're bringing AI into the solution to make sure that we're better understanding where it's okay to show up in the conversations around the election that aren't inflammatory or, highly politicized. I think another thing to call out in terms of election safety in general is what we're seeing is news publishers are also expanding their inventory, right? So they're getting a little bit smarter because brands do want access to the really quality audiences that exist on those news publications. And so the news publishers are starting to expand into lifestyle or games. And so that gives advertisers an opportunity to still leverage the quality audiences that we see in those news publications, but also, minimizing the adjacency risk around some of that more touchy content. So those are the kinds of things that we're looking at as we head into election cycle.
Terri, what about you? How are you making sure that Bank of America is safe in an election cycle without limiting scale?
We've spent a ton of time figuring out how to safely navigate news as a whole. So to what Rob was saying, because it's an extremely important category. It's a very valuable category, as Rob mentioned. And so we've kind of put a process in place to evaluate our partners. I mean, the first thing that you need to do is you need to know where your brand's running, right? You need to vet your partners. If you know your suitability tolerance, then vet your partners for bias, for misinformation. Know what their policies are and how they enforce their policies. And then that should give you a sense of where you want to be. And then on top of that, apply all the controls that are available out there. And you have to apply the controls not just at a partner level, because controls vary significantly by ad placement level as well. So, you've got to go all the way kind of deep granular view, but you can do it. And then once you've got all these controls and you feel like you've mitigated risk, ask yourself, does it go far enough? And if it does, and you go forward, just make sure that you've got a rapid response plan in place, right? Give your agency the autonomy to, if they flag something, because we're monitoring everything, if we get an alert and it's significant, shut it down immediately, assess the problem, and then, figure out the path forward. So, that's what we apply to news. We're applying the same type of thing when we look at elections. I will tell you that we go much deeper with elections, though. And one best practice that we've found is to kind of anticipate what the news cycle is going to be around elections. And we know now there are certain dates and times where there's going to be more activity than not. And maybe you make certain decisions not to be in market around that activity if your risk tolerance is low. So again, there are just real practical solutions to put in place to stay active and be in news during politics.
Can't fix what you don't measure, need to have a rapid response plan. And when you can plan for it, know the media cycle and try to get ahead of it. Those are all great pieces of advice. John, anything to add from the DV point of view?
Sure. Again, we've covered an extraordinary amount of ground. I'll just kind of lay this out, and Collette mentioned or referred to this a bit earlier. In 2024, there will be more elections than at any other time in history. More than 4 billion people are expected to visit polls. So many of those elections will be free and open. Many will not. What we can fully expect is a rise in fraudulent activity, hate speech, inflammatory content, etc. And we've already touched on the importance of news as a platform. At DV, we do believe news matters. We believe in a free and open press, and we want to make sure that the advertising community continues to invest in those platforms. As a former media buyer, I can definitively say that news was a differentiator and an opportunity to connect with audiences. DV offers a full suite of tools to provide elevated precision and control. Talked about page exceptions, keywords, inclusion, exclusion, and then leveraging our sophisticated content classification solutions to make sure that we are navigating the nuance that is inevitable in those platforms. So we are very much pro news, very much supportive of the journalism efforts.
Yeah, supporting quality journalism, definitely part of our mission to make the internet stronger, safer, and more secure, right? They go hand in hand. The other side of that coin is something like made for advertising, right? MFA content, which is on the rise, unfortunately. As I noted earlier, impression volume on MFA sites increased 19% year over year. And we are hearing from buyers that an increase in low quality content and MFA sites are disruptive and threats to the digital ecosystem. But let's hear from you guys directly. Deva, I'll start with you. How much of a concern are MFA sites to you and your clients, and how have you helped to mitigate those concerns?
So MFA is a huge concern. No big surprise. I'm sure that's what we're all going to say. Frankly, it has MFA as a category has been a concern for quite some time. There is a lot of news, obviously, in the marketplace around the subject right now. There are potential impacts to brand reputation management, all the way through, as we know, to budget implications, and then finally, just running inventory within standards. But I'd like to start with the fact that I think many of us are of the same mind here. We need a better definition of what MFA is, because MFA as an umbrella can have some detrimental effect on small and emerging businesses, including diverse owned properties, and the ability for clients and agencies to participate with them. It's also important to note that the current MFA definition, it could be an umbrella term that can apply to O&O inventory that's monetized through other sources. So even our wonderful partners at DV and the solution that you rolled out recently can't immediately identify it. So there are some holes in the current definition. So we definitely need to work together to make sure that we're updating that together as an industry. As we know, the rise of AI also has the potential to create an even deeper problem here. We might be standing on the precipice of a dramatic increase in the amount of potential MFA opportunities. But the good news is that there are lots of tools and services out there. Obviously, we have been going through and recommending all of our clients who run on platform with DV, for instance, to switch on MFA protection within their brand safety and suitability and fraud protection standards. We also are partnering with one of the two leaders in the ecosystem to go through and vet our current solution and our current inclusion list, and we're finding that some of the processes that we had in place previous to this sort of increase in news around MFA were working, because the score that we have in terms of percentage of MFA, at least at that moment in time, where our scores were actually much higher than average. So moving forward, it is very important for us to continue to partner with you guys at DV and some of the other folks in the ecosystem to make sure that our clients are protected as the situation continues to unfold.
John, anything to add in terms of what you're hearing from clients as well? I know MFA is a hot topic in the industry. Definitely those on the line are trying to avoid a lot of it. Anything else you're hearing from other advertisers?
Yeah, I think I'll echo what Terri said. I mean, excuse me, what Deva said. There's a massive uptick in concern, right? I think everyone was blissfully ignorant of what was happening in the marketplace for the last couple of years. I'm not saying that was deliberate. I just think we saw like, oh wow, there's all these sites. We're on our phones constantly, and you're scrolling endlessly through these properties. It's like, that should have been a signal. So the concern is there. The tools are there. That said, MFA is kind of a nebulously defined category, right? Some of these platforms actually do have credible content. They're aggregators, if you will, but they actually get human beings consuming that content. So it's still early days as it relates to MFA. I think there's an opportunity to refine in the future. What we certainly don't want to do is overly compress the opportunity back to that scale concern. Which I think is a risk, right, in the early days here. But that's something, obviously, that we'll continue to focus on over the months and years ahead.
Yeah, definitely a good point. It's always a balance of protection and scale, right? And I think MFAs are also directly related to another trend that we were talking about, sustainability in advertising, because as we've all learned, especially in recent years, every digital impression, has a carbon footprint. And understanding the relationship between media quality and sustainability can actually help advertisers leverage their responsible media frameworks and positively impact their ad campaigns, right? And also the climate, which would be ideal for everyone. It's also worth noting, as part of how these connect to each other, we actually found that high MFA sites, which have high ad density, generate 44% more emissions relative to the average. So these are directly related. Deva, is sustainability something you and your clients are taking more seriously now and in the coming years? And also, is there any connection in your conversations with your clients about MFAs?
Yeah, absolutely. In short, yes, sustainability is getting to be a much more frequent topic of conversation. It's worth noting that the movement really started probably about a year ago, actually, among our global clients. Because as we know, conversation in EMEA around ESG goals relating to local laws and so forth. All that conversation started in markets like France, where there are actually rules and regulations that would penalize businesses for not adhering to goals. We do know that those discussions are happening in the U.S. government right now, so really excited for what's to come there. And obviously Dentsu, like I'm sure all the other colleagues that I have on here, we do have our net zero goal in mind as well. But it's important to make sure from our perspective that when we hear from clients that they have interest in this area, that they would like to start testing, it's important that we construct bespoke strategies and solutions for them that map directly to their ESG goals. And it's important that we make sure that those strategies are SMART, if I can use that acronym. So, specific, measurable, so on and so forth, so that they can be repeatable and they can have practical application to their ESG goals. It's also important that we're able to unify those strategies with their overall media strategies so that we're not cannibalizing one or the other. Because, sort of prioritizing sustainability in media, the last thing we as an industry want to have happen is that we take some of the steam out of overall media and marketing, and therefore sort of decelerate our ability to do good for our clients.
And perform, right? I mean,
absolutely.
Advertising does have a primary goal,
right?
That's
what we're here to do.
We're all here for, yeah, for sure. And media quality as a baseline, I think we all have agreed, is kind of a sound baseline for performance. So let's dive a little bit into performance. As I noted, nearly half of media buyers globally in our survey are planning to include attention-based metrics on most of their media buys this year. It's a huge increase. Rob, would love to hear from you, especially with the looming deprecation of third-party cookies, privacy regulations, all those trends that I talked about at the very beginning. Have you and your clients used attention-based metrics to help improve media campaigns? And what improvements have you seen, or what have you learned that you can share?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, first of all, I love that we're moving in the industry beyond vanity metrics like viewability. Viewability is still extremely important, but obviously that only gives us half of the story, right? It gives us whether the ad had the opportunity to be seen, but that doesn't matter if the users are not actually seeing and the messages aren't resonating with your target audience, right? So, and I think that's probably, like, if I could, give a key takeaway up front. We're looking at attention always as supplemental to other metrics, right? So it is supplemental to our baseline quality metrics and verification. And then it also needs to work hand in hand with downstream performance KPIs that are ultimately, providing business impact, because that's kind of what it is, right? It's the bridge between the quality metrics and the business outcome metrics. And we have seen correlation in things like attention and brand lift. And one of the great examples of that is on a beauty retailer client that we have within Digitas, where we were looking to see to prove out the value of BIPOC owned and targeted sites in our media plans. And so what we did was we combined attention metrics with some brand health metrics like aided and unaided awareness. And we did see a high correlation. So first of all, we saw that the BIPOC owned and targeted sites either matched or outperformed in terms of those brand health metrics, which is great. But the most interesting thing that we saw is within those BIPOC sites, we actually saw that an even higher correlation between attention and brand health. So the higher attention audiences on the BIPOC sites were even more likely to have high brand favorability or high unaided awareness. So that proved to us that the investment was absolutely, warranted. And so those were some great insights we saw in terms of attention measurement.
That's great. John, I see you're itching to add something here.
Yeah. No, I think we would all agree that we are fully immersed in this multisensory media environment that is getting more and more challenging to understand what levers are actually driving performance. We believe attention is emerging as one of those signals. To Rob's point, it is not a standalone, but in conjunction with other data sets, it becomes really powerful. So that's from a measurement perspective. What we believe the opportunity is ahead of us is actioning on those signals, leveraging custom bidding, AI-powered custom bidding algorithms. So imagine a world, just to bring a couple of these concepts together, where you're reducing your CPM, you're reducing your carbon emission impact, yet you're increasing attention, right? That's a powerful proposition to a CMO or brand marketer or a media decision maker, where we're able to drive impact, efficiency, and have a social responsibility component to it. So we believe that is just a sample of what the opportunities are ahead of us. And frankly, the greater control that we can actually put in the hands of marketers. I think it's an exciting development to the attention narrative, one that I think makes it much more tangible and real in the years ahead.
Sounds like nirvana. If only we could do that without needing a lot of solutions and constantly innovating in tech, right? So I want to move in the last 10 minutes or so into AI because, of course, we need to talk about AI on this call. Let's start with, we're going to talk about the kind of threats and opportunities. Let's start with the threats. What are some of the concerns that you guys have with the capabilities of Gen AI and how that's impacting media and advertising? Terri, let's start with you.
Let me get myself off mute. Sorry about that. How it's impacting media and advertising. I mean, it has the potential to do a lot of good, but it does have the potential to do harm, right? And so where we've been focused mostly is working with industry partners to kind of identify the AI and make sure that we put policies and controls in place. So when users are interacting with it or brands are aligning to it, we know that it's like, AI generated content, and we can make a decision then as to, is this appropriate for our brand? Is it not? Is it something that we want to be exposed to? So that's really where our focus is.
Makes sense. Deva, on your side, what are some of the concerns that you're hearing with the capabilities of Gen AI and the increase in usage?
Yeah. Yes, and to everything that Terri said. We also have a high level of concern around once again this sort of set it and forget it attitude, and making sure that we don't extend that to AI as well. In terms of just concerns around ethics and governance specifically. We have the opportunity as an industry to establish standards and ways of working that will allow for just really incredible, exciting innovation using, leveraging AI. But we have to be really careful about how we build and maintain and teach and educate the actual AI engines that we're creating to best conform to the particular needs of each of our different cultures and societies, so that there's sensitivity built in. We've all been through in the last 5 years or so the latest conversations around equity, for instance, equity and inclusion, and we're all rapidly trying to retrofit our existing systems to accommodate different audiences, different cultures. We have the ability to build those sensitivities in. We also have the ability to build in methods of education of AI so that we can keep up with changes. We don't have to rely on on some of my colleagues mentioned things like just regular keyword structures, regular inclusion structures. AI has the ability to think beyond all those basic methodologies that we were using before. So it really is important that we build all of those structures in, and we build in the mechanisms for our companies to be able to maintain education, sort of in an ongoing fashion.
It's a great segue into opportunities and benefits here. Rob, what are you seeing as the biggest potential benefit for marketers who are looking to embrace AI tech right now? It's a really important time for that, integral time.
I don't think I could pinpoint a single opportunity. I think there's a ton of opportunity on the horizon with AI. I find myself often referring to the Harvard Business Review published an article last year that introduced something called the WINS framework, and that stands for words, images, numbers, and sounds. And essentially what they said is if your business heavily relies on the manipulation or management of words, images, numbers, and sound, then your industry is ripe for disruption from generative AI. And I couldn't help but think, wow, our digital marketing industry definitely fits into that category. And so there's so much opportunity. I think, we focus on a variety of, different use cases. I think everywhere from, strategy to media planning to creative production, operations. And what we think is it allows us to kind of automate the busy work, right? And so what we would like to see from the agency perspective is if we can automate the busy work, then our teams can focus on being more thoughtful, strategic, and creative. Our chief operating officer puts it very nicely. I won't steal the quote from him. He says, AI will liberate the team from the mundane so that we can focus on the brilliant. And so that's what we want to do with AI, is make sure that we're focusing more on the brilliant. I think it'll help us in a competitive agency landscape to do more with less. And if I can give a quick plug, what I love about Digitas in particular is that we don't just sit as a media agency, right? We call ourselves the networked experience agency, so we have access to several other capabilities within the agency, including a full technology capability. And so what that allows us to do is, as our media teams recognize an opportunity or a problem that can be solved with AI, we can take it to our technology team and build really great solutions for that. So I know Publicis is also investing a lot of money into our core AI platform. So I do think there's lots of opportunities. What I would say is I would caveat that with we should be thoughtful about the types of opportunities that we're relying on from AI. So I don't think that AI can replicate creativity. I think creativity will always have to come from humans. And so we need to make sure that we're being thoughtful about where we're applying it. And then also, as we think about, AI for like content generation, I think the brands need to make sure that they're maintaining a voice, because otherwise it'll be a sea of generic if we let the AI do all of that. So we need to, continue to rely on humans for creativity and let AI kind of build, automate the mundane, if you will.
Gian, any last words on the AI front in terms of benefits?
Yeah, of course. I fully am completely aligned with you, Rob. Human creativity will never be replaced. It's actually foundational for AI to be successful. So we acquired a major player in the AI-powered custom algo space last year in Scibids AI. So we've had a front row seat to really understand the impact and efficacy of these solutions in market, working with some of the largest and most sophisticated brands. We're seeing average of 15 to 50+%. Which is extraordinary. But to that exact same point that you were just tapping into, Rob, while the AI tech is amazing, unbelievably powerful, we fully leverage a team of leaned in, forward-thinking data scientists to train the models, right? The models need that human intervention, that human direction. And it's that combination of human and artificial intelligence that's going to be the difference maker. We believe Scibids creates an unfair competitive advantage for our customers, and they're beginning to see it pan out in the market.
Great. So we are right up against time. Unfortunately, we didn't really have time for Q&A. We did have some great questions for the audience. So I encourage you guys to reach out to your DB sales rep, sales@doubleverify.com if you don't know who that is. Thank you all for a great discussion. I do want to note that the Global Insights Trends Report and also the Americas reports will be available starting June 5th. You got a sneak preview today to hopefully what are some very interesting trends that you want to dig into more. Everyone who registered for this webinar today, whether live or dropped off, will get emailed access on our launch day. So you don't have to worry about downloading that separately. Huge thank you again to John, Rob, Deva, Terri. Fantastic conversation. Thank you so much for your time. I'm sure everyone in the audience found it interesting and helpful. And thank you everyone again for joining. Have a great day.